All right, now we're recording. So now I can say it again. Hello, everybody. I'm very, very glad you're here. I am in the process. I am letting people in as we are getting started. So hold on a second. Let's mute my mom so that Anne shows up. So I'm going to keep you all muted for the time being. Hey, Anne, say something. Say hello.
Hi everyone.
Perfect. Okay. I don't know about y'all. I have it set for speaker view, and that's what she had to do so I could actually see her. So I am so glad you're all here. So I think a lot of you are returning. If you're new, I'm very glad you found us. These are our classes for the Curious Musician. This is our second series of 8 classes. This is our last one in the series. We saved the best for last. Well, I can't say that because all of them were fantastic, but this one's going to be extra fantastic. Just a little housekeeping. I'm not technologically really great. If I have some issues or problems, y'all keep carrying on. If my internet dies, y'all should be able to keep going. I am recording this. I should have it up on the Huthmaker Violins YouTube channel, hopefully tomorrow afternoon. I got to go to Alabama tomorrow, so that could be the next day. But I'll get it up as soon as possible. Anne has sent me some supplementary material that I will screenshot and save with you guys. But also, if you will put your email in the chat, I will also email them to you so you can have them. And I'm from Huthmaker Violins, if you don't know that. We have a family violin shop in the North Atlanta area, and we invite you all to come see us if you're in the area. We started these classes because during COVID, all of our adult amateur music friends were losing all their opportunities to learn and to play, and we thought this would be fun. It's turned out it has been a lot of fun. So we might do another series. I'm not sure. If we do, it will probably be in the fall. So if you have any ideas for classes, go to huthmakerviolins.com and shoot me an email, or go to our Facebook page and shoot me an email, or go to our YouTube channel. Any way you want, shoot me an email. So today's guest, y'all are sick and tired of me saying it, but I say it for almost every class, that the best thing about this is that I got to really spotlight some of my favorite musicians that are out there and share with them like some of the great people I know. And tonight's guest, Anne Hobbs, is like that. I don't know what she's does. I've never taken a cello lesson with her, but every cellist I know that has comes out 40 times better than they went in. I think she sprinkles magic dust in their drinking water or something. So today she's going to talk to us about practice techniques. As you have questions, put them in the chat and I will interrupt her and ask them as they come. Sound good?
Great.
All right. Thank you for being here, Anne. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, first, I've just got to thank Anna and the amazing Huthmaker family. Just first of all, for hosting these series. Anna, what an incredible gift you've given the community. And also just the way they take care of our students. I know my students just feel so cared and valued by you and your family. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We love what we do. So
yeah. And I'm so glad. I like interactions. So I would just love you to throw out questions or even to share anything that you might have to add to what I'm saying. Because all of you are musicians and you might just have some cool ideas that you could add to the mix. Before we start, do you mind if I just know what instruments are in the room? So maybe all cellists, if you could just show your hands. And violinists? Violinists, okay. Violists? And double bass, Anna. Okay, so a nice little mix. So obviously I'm a cellist, so what I demonstrate is all going to be on the cello, but I think a lot of the stuff I show you will be able to translate to your instrument, or you can just tweak it here and there. So I want to start off by just going through my handout that will just pinpoint the 10 tips and tricks for effective practice. So obviously one can talk for days about practice. I mean, it's so vast, but I just thought I'd highlight a couple of the things that I thought were super important. So the first one we'll talk about is the tip for goals and a roadmap to get to the goals. Then learn from athletes is my second tip. Gathering practice tools. Tips for starting with the nuts and bolts. Telling a story. Tips for playing in tune. Shifting with ease. Playing like a virtuoso. Knowing your bow and letting your bow sing. And I'll obviously, if there's time permits, which probably there will be time permitting, I'll certainly go over some bonus tips as well. So I'm going to be talking a lot, but I'll also do some instrument demonstration along the way. So I thought I'll just share a little bit about my practice journey with you before I go into the tips. I've been playing for a very long time, well, since I was 7, and my practice years all began not very well, because practicing for me was just a chore, and it got in the way of time with my friends. They were all doing social things, and I was at home having to practice my cello. But I'm so grateful to my mom because she kept me going. And when I got to my college years and after that, practicing is now an absolute gift. And I just am always so excited when I can grab some time to practice. Can you all relate to that? Sort of, okay. When I got to my college years and for my adult years, my love of practice just grew. And not only did it give me the ability to develop my skills and my instrument, but it gave me the opportunity to be creative, to foster patience, to build confidence, and to just accomplish some things. It also is a great motivator. And this is something I tell my students because so often my students will say to me, Miss Anne, I'm just not motivated to practice at all. And my comeback to them is practice to be motivated. So it's like getting out of bed in the morning. You know, you just don't feel like getting out, but you get that first foot out the bed, and then suddenly you got your coffee and the day's ready to go. So practice is just like that. So my first word of encouragement is just get your instrument and start practicing. And then the magic and the transformation happens. Alrighty, so moving on to, sorry. See, I didn't know that would happen. Let me just switch off my phone. I'm so sorry about that. Sorry. Okay, my first tip for effective practice, I don't know what's going on. Did I disappear there for a moment? No.
I don't think so. I think you look great.
Okay, wonderful, because my screen's going backwards and forwards. I'm getting a change, so I don't know what happened there. Okay, so the first tip is to do with goal setting. And obviously with goal setting, you can do the whole year goals broken up into half year, monthly, weekly, daily, and then even down to the minute. And what I thought I would do is give you another handout that will help you come up with your goal plans for your practice. This sheet is not to make you feel discouraged, but to encourage you, because it's going to show you all your strengths in your playing and then the areas that you want to strengthen. And this sheet will help you home in and focus well in your practice. So the rating is easy. You'll just do 1 through 5. So this is in your own time. You can just rate your playing in tune, playing in time, keeping tempo, sound variety. That is, are you able to play with a deep, rich, mellow sound, or a sound that is more light and airy that you play on your fingerboard? Do you project? Are you able to get your sound to the back of a room? How's your musical expression? Do you tell a story when you play? interpretation and style. Do you look up the composer that you're playing the work of? Read their story. What style period are they in, so that you can play the piece in the style that it was written? Sight reading skills. Left hand technique is very vague because obviously you can break that down into shifting, vibrato, finger velocity, and bow technique. You can break down into legato bow, staccato, spiccato, collet, all the different bow strokes. Then rating your playing posture, and then lastly, practice. Then I've also got a section where you can write down your goals for repertoire. Maybe pieces you dreamed of playing, just so that you can come up with a plan on how you want to gauge that. I always say to my students, because some of them come and they want to play a big major cello concerto, but they're only at a level that can cope with a student concerto. So I'll say to them, you know, we'll get there, but let's first play this and then move to that bigger transition later. So once you've filled out the sheet, you are going to get a really good idea what your focus points are going to be for your practice. Okay, moving on, we now will take a look at the actual goals themselves. I've done a weekly practice sheet and a daily practice sheet, just so that you can see how I do things, and then you can obviously just go with what you feel that will work for you as well. A lot of my students like to get journals and keep a journal log of their practice. I do it this way. I just do these separate sheets, put them in a 3-note binder, and then I can keep track of everything that I'm doing. So if we can look at the weekly ones first, that would be great. Anna? Okay, so you can see on the sheet that I've got a place for focus. So you're going to go and look at the sheet you filled out where you rated yourself, and you will put in your focus. So say you rated low on playing posture. So you're going to be focusing on that this week, and everything you do, you're going to want to check and make sure your posture is right. And I'll go into that a little more. So the first thing I do is I list my warm-ups. Then I decide on my scales and arpeggios, and often I'll decide to work on scales and arpeggios that are in the repertoire that I'm playing, so that they relate to those pieces. Then etudes, sight reading, then listing your orchestra chamber music, and then your pieces, and then listening. I'm a Suzuki teacher, and one of the Suzuki principles is that you listen before you play. So getting a whole lot of recordings of the piece or the orchestra piece that you're playing, of lots of people playing it. So you get a lot of different interpretations. And so by the time you start learning your piece or orchestra repertoire, you know it. It's in your head, and you're starting from a really good place. Okay, moving on to the daily practice goals. Okay, so the same thing is here. You're going to put in your focus for the week. So as I said, maybe it's going to be your posture. Then what I do is lay all my practice out with a time frame. And it's been proven that 20 minutes is that sweet spot of time that you can maintain focus with just one activity. And after 20 minutes, you want to change the activity. So if you're playing scales, maybe after 20 minutes, you don't have to stop practicing, but you want to maybe go and work on a piece. I do it in even smaller increments. So you can see an example of my warm-ups. I've got 4 minutes for body warm-ups with and without my cello, then 2 minutes for tonalization, 5 minutes scales, 4 minutes, my favorite vibrato exercise. Then my next chunk of practice is going to be my second goal, which is my orchestra piece. And I'm going to spend 10 minutes targeting tricky rhythmic passages. And then I'm going to do another 10 minutes where I'm going to work on the soli cello sections for intonation. Then my next practice chunk of time is going to be on one of my pieces. I'll spend 10 minutes playing through the piece, and then the next 10 minutes just working on the spots that I see need work. And then sight reading for 5 minutes. Has anybody got any questions or input at this point? Yes, Anna.
Sorry, I'm trying to juggle everything. So, I love this idea of rating yourself, but if you are not used to that, how do you rate yourself? I mean, some of us are super hard on ourselves. Some of us don't know what kind of standard to hold ourselves to. Do you have any tips for that?
Gosh, that's an excellent question. I was just coming from it where, there's one of two things. You could maybe, if you have a teacher, some of you might not, but if you have a teacher, maybe start by asking the teacher to help you rate yourself. Maybe you've got a musician friend that you play with, maybe you play duets with, and you say, could you just help me get an idea of what you think of these parts of my playing? Otherwise, you've just got to trust yourself. And I think you evaluate yourself. Maybe you might not be 100% on target, but as you start the practice process, you'll also get a better picture of, whether your gauging of how you're doing was right or a little bit off the mark. I also know nowadays with the online opportunities we have for all the YouTube videoing we can watch, one can also get very good ideas of what things should be just by watching this myriad of teachers teaching online or giving master classes. So I think just based on that, you can get an idea. Also, you've just got to take where you're at in mind. So if you've only been learning for a year, you have to rate yourself on a year's worth of learning. So you can't rate yourself for someone on the standard that someone's been learning for, say, 3 or 4 years. Does that help? Okay, I didn't think about that when I put this out. Now, I kept on thinking, oh, maybe this is going to make people think of being hard on themselves, and that's not the goal. The goal is just to see where the places are that I need my work, so that it just helps your focus in your practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Louetta, do you have a question, sweetie? Your hand's up. She's muted.
Oh, no, I'll have to figure out how to take it down. That was when she was asking what instrument we play.
Okay, thank
So I
you.
had hands up for viola.
Okay, so we all good. Excellent. If you have goals, you're going to get there, but if it's hit and miss here and there, you'll still get things done, but it just won't be as strategic as when you've set these goals ahead of you. Okay, moving on to tip number 2, learn from athletes. Okay, so where I'm coming from here is athletes have a wonderful ability to warm up correctly, well, they should, cool down correctly and take breaks. Often in the past, I've thought, I'm going to practice my cello. I sit down, I play the cello, and the next minute I'm playing away, and I can feel that the body doesn't feel right, but I've done no warming up. So I think warming up your instrument and your body first is going to set you up for effective practice and help avoid injuries. Obviously not serious injuries, but things like tendonitis or just sore back, all these things. So I thought what I would do is actually show you the warm-up routine that I do and I ask my students to do. And Very simple steps. These are going to be away from your cello. Okay, so the first one is breathing exercises. So when you breathe, you want to get your breath right into your diaphragm. So you're going to lay your feet and your legs in line with your shoulders, and you're going to raise your hands, counting in for 8, holding, and out. In for, I'm not going to do it because it'll take time. In for 8, hold for 8, out. The next exercise I do is called windmills. I lay my hands above like that, and then with your feet just spread apart slightly, you're going to lean over. And of course, this stretches this whole side of your body, which is fabulous for our playing. Okay, those are called, what are they called? Willow, this is the willow tree. The next exercise I do are shoulder rolls, where you move your shoulders backwards and then forwards. The next exercise is to do with the neck. So this one you just want to be careful, but saying yes, no, and maybe super slowly. So it's just pulling the neck muscles by leaning forward, and then pulling the neck muscles here, leaning back. This one I love because it gets the neck. You know how when we play, we get this nice tight feeding in our muscles there. And then this one also, nice stretch in the neck. Okay, the next exercise is called windmills, and this one you've got to be careful you don't hurt yourself. So you bend your knees, and what you do is you're going to throw your arms forward, making sure, obviously if you physically can't, that's okay, but moving your arms just to get the blood going, and then you go backwards, and then opposite. Okay, which is, you got to think about that one. Okay, so that's body warm-ups. Now I'm already feeling relaxed. My blood is rushing. I've warmed up. And I know that I'm going to just start off well. So when I take my breaks or when I finish practicing, I do those same exercises. Okay, then after I have done my body warm-ups, I then move on to the cello warm-ups with my cello. Let me just, can you see my cello? Can you see the bridge? Okay. The first thing is, as I sit down with my cello, I go through a couple of things. My head, my shoulders, and my hips must be aligned. My ribs must be up from my hips, my shoulders wide, and my head balancing on my spine. The core, whenever you play an instrument, you want your core to be super strong so that you've got the support when you bow. So I check that my core is strong. And when I play, you can go sideways, but you don't want this when you play. You know this where you collapse here? And then all the strength in your bow is lost. You want to make sure that you are nice and strong in your core. So I think about that. My back's tall, and I come in with my cello. Okay, next thing I do is my bow warm-ups. I do finger lifts where I give every finger a turn. Then I do what I call fishing. This exercise works the first and the fourth finger. And this is for string crossing. Can you see how my first and fourth move sideways? And then I check that my thumb is nice and squishy bendy. Okay, so once my hand is warmed up, I now warm up my left hand. These are called ski jumps. And I love these exercises. I do them all day long because I love them so much. It's basically just getting you to move along your whole fingerboard. So I start by doing the ski jump with a swing. And I go back. The whole time, do you see my body's not moving because I'm keeping my posture very balanced and steady. So my arm is moving, but everything else is set and solid. Then I bring my bow to the exercise, and with 2 fingers lightly on the inside of my string, I just float. And then I do it with an up bow. So easy. So I could be playing here, playing there. Now, my students love this one. I call it the concerto variation. So you're going to be doing the same thing up and down the instrument, but you just move the fingers up and down. And I tell them, book 10. You know, this is book 10. You're playing in book 10. So they get this excited feeling like, wow, I can play up here, even though they're only just playing any old notes. But it just, everything is easy and ready to go. Okay, so that's my ski jump warm-up. Then I do a bow warm-up. I do what I call bow bounces and dribbles, where I just allow the bow to bounce on the string. And this is a great exercise for straight bow and balance, because you can't do this if you're not balanced. You can even do it with the up bow. And there is just nice heavy arm and bow bounces. Another favorite warm-up is where we get our bow nice and straight and connected to the string. So I call these rowboats. You're going to make X's with your bow like that. So that's your bow not straight. Then you bring it into a T-bow. T-bow. Then I wiggle the string without making a sound. Did you hear the clear sound at the beginning then? Then I do the same X's. T-bow. Wiggle. So that just gets my sound ready to have that instant take when I start the bow. I'm just trying to see if there's any else. Yeah, and this is a great exercise, putting your bow on your bridge and rolling it across the bridge to keep your arm moving across the strings correctly. I call this opening the door. As you approach the high string, your arm, I don't know how it works for violin and viola, but this is what happens with the cello. So this exercise on the bridge helps you warm your bow up for that very thing. It's called rock and roll. Rock and roll. Okay, so that's the cello warm-up. I mean, the body warm-up with the cello. Now I'm going to show you how I warm up the cello with exercises called tonalization. Could you just raise your hand if you've heard of tonalization exercises before? Okay, so what you have? Okay, Linda has. Tonalization is taking a stopped note that is the same note as an open string, playing it and allowing that open string to ring. So I'm going to play A on my D string, and as I play it, my A string is going to ring. You hear the ring going on, but you also, if you look at your instrument, you will see the string vibrating next to it, which is so cool. Then the D. This one is my favorite, D on the C string. When you play this note, The A and the D strings go crazy. I don't know if you can see my strings ringing. Can you? No, sort of.
I
Anyway,
can't.
try that. Try that with your instrument. And when your instrument starts the day with ringing tones, your sound is going to be better. It also gets your ear really tuned into the notes that you're playing, because you close your eyes, you listen, and oh, that's my A. That's the ringing sound that I want. So you already are going to start your practicing with much better intonation with ringing sounds. Okay, so that sums up the warm-ups. Moving on to tip number 3, and that is gathering your tools, practice tools. And I love this one because when my tools are ready to go, I just also have a much more effective practice time. So the first thing I want to mention is I like my cello on its stand ready to go. So if I have 5 minutes, all I have to do is get my instrument, and there it is. I don't have to unpack it and find where it is. It's there, I pick it up, and I'm ready to go. So that's the first thing I would suggest, a stand for your instrument and a proper practice area where you've got your stand light. Metronome, obviously a very important tool. And my recommendation is not to have it on your phone. Nowadays, we have the slow down app on the phone, the drone tone tool on the phone, the metronome on the phone. So if you want to use 2 of them at the same time, you're stuck. So if you have your metronome separate, then you can use your drone tone tool on your phone maybe, and your metronome separately. Have any of you heard of the Slow Downer app? Okay, that's a fantastic tool. Putting it on your phone, getting your music, slowing it down, and then being able to play your piece with the recording is an incredible practice tool. Another tool that I use is a mirror. And the mirror is like my teacher, because I'm looking at myself. I can see what my bow's doing. I can see what my left hand's doing, and I can see what my face is doing. Sometimes we play and we pull funny faces, and we don't realize we're pulling funny faces until we see them in the mirror. So I would highly recommend mirror practice. It's nice to know your music when you do that, so that you can actually watch yourself while you're playing. Pencil, colored pens, other tools that I like because I like to mark up my music. Timer. Setting a timer is so useful. So if you've got like a 2-minute session for your tonalization, you put the timer on, you do it. When the timer's done, that's it. Move on to the next thing. So that kind of keeps you going and keeps your focus. Another one of my favorites is recording myself playing. At first, I didn't like it because I didn't want to see myself playing or hear myself. I wouldn't like some of the things I heard. But it has been one of the most useful things because I don't see and hear, obviously when I'm playing, the way that I see and hear when I'm watching myself afterwards. And sometimes you actually like, wow, that was actually quite nice. You get nice surprises too. So what I do is I bought myself one of these phone stands, and I put my phone up, turn on the camera. Nowadays it's so easy. Get the video, look at it, and then say, okay, I see I want to do this and this and this, and then I apply that to my practice. Let's see if there was anything else. Comfortable clothes. I always practice, sometimes even in my pajamas if no one's around. Slippers, anything that I can just easy, it's movable, it's not tight, and it just makes the practice more comfortable. And obviously hydration, water, coffee, whatever you enjoy. So on that, do I have any questions or any input from anybody else? Okay. All right, tip number 4. This is, I've titled the nuts and the bolts. And what I mean by that is the very starting place of any piece that you play. This is foundation, and this is where the transformation takes place. And I believe that this is almost the hardest part of the practice, because it's the part where you are working out the fingerings, the bowing, you're practicing slowly, you're using the metronome. But when you do this, then you open up this world of gold afterwards for the storytelling and the music making. I call this process the clean canvas time. You know, when you've played a piece for a long time, your muscles have learned the memory of what it is to play that piece. And if you've got a few bad habits, you've been practicing those bad habits in the piece. But when you get a new piece, there's no muscle memory. And it's a time to start with everything as it needs to be. So with this, what I do is when I get a piece of music, number one is I've listened to it so that I know the piece inside out in my ear. I know what it sounds like. Then my second step for the nuts and bolts is to just have a quick overview look of the piece. I check the keys, the main key, all the modulations, like, oh my gosh, there's that hard spot. Put a bracket around something I know is going to need a lot of work. Then, easy, I can almost sight read that part. I look at dynamics, obviously the style period, you know, Baroque, classical, modern, what the composer, who the composer was he a cellist, you know, wasn't he a cellist, what did he play? So all those things, just get an overview. So it's like the history behind the piece, so you've got some form of reference. Then what I do is I start with all the difficult passages and I work out all the finger patterns, the bowing. And I must say, though, that those change. I will change fingering sometimes 4 or 5 times. And then I'll go back to the first fingering I came up with. Because as you play it, things evolve and you see things work better or not as well. And repetition. In the Suzuki method, one of the big core fundamentals of this method is numerous repetitions. And I'll read a quote to you from Dr. Suzuki. He says that knowledge plus 10,000 repetitions is mastery. So that sounds pretty over the top, 10,000, right? But so even if you're doing 20, 30 repetitions, that still makes a difference. The thing with repetitions is you have to repeat well, because you don't want to repeat all the wrong habits. You want to repeat playing in a relaxed way, with the right bow direction, with the right fingering, with good intonation, and then the repetitions really pay off. Anyway, so now I'm going to talk about the layers that I work with when I start a new section. The first thing I do is I work on the rhythm, because without rhythm, you can't really put anything together. So if it's a super tricky rhythm, I don't even have my instrument. I clap it. I put the metronome on slowly, think through the rhythms, clap them. Okay, now I've got it. And then I can put it onto the instrument. The next level is left hand only. And when I do this, I pluck and I just play the fingering slowly, thinking about what positions I'm in. How am I getting there? What shift am I using? And I'll go through that later. We use a whole lot of different shifting patterns. And then I just make sure that when I'm moving, is my arm well balanced? Am I ski jumping my arm forward? Is my arm ready to move my hand forward? Then I do bow only. Now this is a little tricky because, you know, the left hand often drives the bow, but now the bow is just going to drive itself. Just choose a string, one string, and just follow the bow directions that are in the piece, counting those so that you are getting the proper bow distribution with your counting. When I've done bow only, I then slowly put the two together, and then slowly build up tempo. A nice tip I want to give you with metronome, when you're going to start at the point where you have no hesitations. Then you put your metronome up just 2 notches. Play, 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 check that you've got that. But then you must come down 1. And that's a very nice psychological thing, because you're like, oh, not so hard. Then you go up 2 again, then down 1, up 2, down 1, up 2, down. And then before you know it, you've got it up to speed. But I love the coming down, because it just gives you that breather and ready to take on that next leap up again. Yeah, so that's how I approach the nuts and the bolts. Any questions on that?
Yeah, so I had a question. First of all, when you were talking about all the things that you use for practice, like comfortable clothing and water, Kay had said that for her, privacy is important, and I agreed completely. So I wanted to share that with you.
Privacy, yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Anything to make you comfortable.
Seriously. Also, I wanted to, so when you do your listening, going back to your listening, do you, when you're working on a piece and you listen to it, do you stick with one particular performer, or do you listen to a whole bunch of them?
Yes, when it's the Suzuki repertoire, we actually have the tapes already pre-recorded by a person. But I have my favorite people on YouTube, and I go to them, but I listen to a few, because I love hearing and seeing how they're all playing things differently, different strings, they're using different positions, different fingerings, different bowings. So I like to just see what they do. So definitely the more the merrier.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now,
and I'm
yeah.
sorry, let me just interrupt. In case you're not following the chat, I got brilliant and figured out how to share these PDFs. So they are in the chat for you guys to download. I will still email them to all of you, because I know some of you are on your phone, but I just want to make sure you saw those. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So after the nuts and bolts comes the tip for telling your story. And this, when I was younger, I never got to this place, because I thought just knowing how to play the piece physically, I can do this, that was the end of the journey. But this is actually the beginning of the musical journey. So this is the time we're telling our story in our performance. I want to read you this quote, because I just love this quote, because it describes it exactly. It's a quote from a violinist by the name of Rachel Barton Pine. And she's just a very well-known, fabulous violinist. She says, "The reason we love music so much is that it is an art. Getting everything right is the point at which we actually start working. That's the beginning, not the end." So once you've mastered your piece, and now you're ready to enter that the time of musicianship and artistry, is where the gold lies in the process. So when you get to that place, it's considering the characters that you want to bring into your piece. Maybe you love to think of colors and play the piece thinking about colors, moods. I often say to my students, give me adjectives about what you think about this passage. And we write the adjectives down. Now I want you to try and see if you can, play that emotion or that adjective. And once you're in that place, you then having to consider the detailed elements about bow speed. When you want to get an effect where it's more mysteric, and then you're playing. versus one is far more heavy and intentional, the other's more mystical. Then you can also think about vibrato. If you do a very slow vibrato, you're going to get a certain character. If you speed it up, you're going to get more of an intensity. So it's those things that you want to consider. You even playing, moving from the bridge to the fingerboard. Which part of the bow do you want to play it in? You know, if you want to play something softly, maybe further up the bow is going to help you get over that beautiful soft sound. How much weight do you want to give into the string to get the effect that you need? This is also the time that you want to think about the style period you're playing in. If you're playing a Baroque piece, you don't want to play it in the Romantic style. And vice versa. You don't want to play your Romantic pieces in the Baroque style. So it's knowing what is what. And that's what you get from listening. You pick up all these great stories that other musicians are telling, and then you bring your interpretation into it. This is also the place you captivate your audience, rather than just giving a string of notes, telling the story with your music. Let me see. Oh yes, another thing to consider. When you start learning a piece, say in 6/8, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to play it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But when you get to this artistic place, you're no longer counting the individual beats, but rather the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you get the flow of your music going. So there again, it's considering your tempos and how you're going to be thinking those tempos through as you play. Any questions or thoughts so far?
No, but some of us are shooting some ideas for YouTube people to follow back and forth. And so at some point, maybe you'll share with us some of your favorite YouTube people to listen to.
Okay. All right, so moving on to tip number 6, and this is to do with playing in tune. Just raise your hand or put in the chat any things that you struggle with intonation. Do you struggle with intonation? Yes. Okay. It's one of my biggest struggles, yeah. But there's so many things one can do to help get yourself playing in tune. So the first thing is back into the tonalization. You know, this thing where you're stopping your note that's an open string and getting your string to ring. That's step number 1, because if I play A and I'm slightly off, my string's not going to ring. But when I'm on the spot, do you hear the difference? So suddenly the sound comes alive, it rings, and my string rings. So that's the port of call first for intonation, is tonalizing. So I spent the first part of my practice, I've got a whole sheet of tonalization exercises. The next tip for you is practicing double stops, which is a challenge. There's a book for all the cellists in the room. His name is Rick Mooney, and he has come out with a lot of fun technical books for cellists. He's got thumb position, shifting books, and then he's got his double stop book. So if you're looking for a double stop book, I would highly recommend. I couldn't find my book to show you, but his name is Rick Mooney, and it's tremendous. And you can get his thumb position and his shifting books. They're fabulous. Okay, the next thing for intonation is the drone. So I always, with my scales, I'm just going to find my drone. I put my drone on, Can you hear the drone? Okay, so this is a G drone.
Cooking is all about you. It's about what you add to that dish.
Oops. Okay, so you're going to pretend I've got a G drone, and then I play my scale slowly with the drone, listening. Very slowly, and you're listening. The thing with intonation is you've got to be fully engaged in listening. Is there something funny?
Yes, I'm sorry. We have a married couple, and he says that he is her drone. So, and it's true because he plays bass and she plays cello. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do the same. I drone with my students. I love it because it's something, doing, and then they can hear the intervals and work on their intonation. So the drone is a big deal.
and do you ever do your scale above, like play your open G, but then play on the D string and go up, so you've got that G going? So drone for yourself, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I actually don't do that, but that's not a bad idea. It's kind of like the double stop thing, right?
Yeah, I haven't done it either. I just wondered. It just occurred to me. So.
Yeah. And of course, the magic little tune is another one. Now, this is harder because to get that green light to stay while you're playing is quite a mission. But what I do is I put it on, and then I just take 2 notes and I will just play them one to the other. So here's my E. Okay, I've got the green light. But as I'm doing it, I'm not just watching the light, I'm really trying to listen for that sound. Because I think a lot of the time that we are not playing in tune is more to do with that we're not listening. So for me, to get my intonation better, it's been about being intentional about my listening. And that's why the drone is so good. It just draws your attention to be able to listen more. Another trick for intonation is target practice. So this is get to know your instrument. So you say to yourself, I'll just say for my cello, play A on the D string in 4th position. Okay, check it. Good. Okay, then you can say play B on the A string in 7th position. I hope I was right. Okay, sometimes I'm not. So it's just getting, and then you get to know your positions. And having that security of knowing where your notes is a big deal. So that target practice is another one. Okay, well, that pretty much sums up what I do for intonation. And also listening to other performers play, that's also going to help your intonation because you're hearing outstanding intonation when you hear these masters play. So that's another way you can have learn to have good intonation. Okay, any questions? No? All right. So moving on to tip number 7, we're going to talk about shifting with ease. One of the things that I use as my starting place with shifting with my students is get them to know that the arm moves the hand. The hand doesn't go by itself. Because sometimes you see this kind of shifting, it's trying to get, the arm moves the hand. And when you do that, you have this wonderful support from your arm into your fingers. You can see how nice that is. You see that? And that gives you security. You also engage your arm to get your arm to move and get you to the note that you need to. So that's step number 1. Tip number 2 for shifting is knowing where you've come from and where you're going to. So you've got to know if I'm going from 1st position to 4th position, first position to high 3, first position to 6. And you've got to know these things so that you have that stability in your playing. Then I want to ask myself, what shift am I going to use? So I'm going to talk about 4 kinds of shifts. The first shift is the easy one. That's the open string shift, where you play a note. So I played the open string. While I was playing the open string, I moved to my new note. Easy kind of shift because it gives you lots of time to get there. The second kind of shift is the second easiest, and that is the same finger shift. So I'll demonstrate it in a second. Then the third shift is old finger to new finger, old finger to new finger. And then the last shift is new finger shift, where you put the new finger down and you slide. This shift is often used in romantic music because you hear the slide happening. This one you'll use more when you want a clean shift and you don't want to hear the slide. So, oh yes, and wheels. A wheel, as my teacher described it, she came up with the term wheel, is where you practice going to your shift just by moving your hand up and down first. You get the arm free and easy, and then when it's free and easy, you stop in the note. So I'm going to take a couple of shifts and just show you. This is a same finger shift. So I'm going to go from first position to fourth position. I've said it's the same finger shift. So I go wheel. See, that gets me all relaxed. Stop. And my fingers landed in its place. But I didn't, this just allows nice and relaxed. Okay, let's do a new finger shift. So I'm going to slide on my 3 because that's my new finger. Now I'm going to bow it. Did you hear the slide in there? New finger. Now old finger. So the old finger goes and then you drop the new finger in. So you hear that shift is cleaner. All right, so knowing what kind of shift, where you're coming from, and the wheels, that gets you totally set for your shifts. Now, if you're still struggling with your shift, I have another tip that I like to use. Sing the note that you're going to before you go there. So I'll take the same example. La. Because you want to hear the note that you're going to before you go there. Another trick is to go the octave higher, which it makes it a long shift. But then when you go back to your other shift, suddenly, hey, this is not so hard anymore. So that's another tip that I use sometimes that really works well. Any questions about that so far? Okay. Moving on to tip number 8, which is playing, tips for playing like a virtuoso. And what I mean by that is fast playing. Oh yeah, I got distracted there for a moment. Fast playing, it's getting your finger velocity going. And I have some great tips for this. The first thing, let me just ask Anna. Anna, have you got this, the rhythmic thing? That will be the next sheet. You don't have to put it up now, but that will be the next sheet that I'll use. Okay.
Will you email it to me and I'll include it when I email folks? Because it wasn't in your file.
Oh, it wasn't in the file.
I just had the 4 things in the file. Yeah.
Okay, I'll send that one to you. And I'll actually show you on the screen because it's quite a good one to know. Okay, so the first thing I do for tips to get my fingers playing fast is memorizing my fingers. Then I don't have to look at the music anymore. I can focus on what I'm doing with my fingers. The next thing I do is want to make sure that whatever passage I'm playing with fingers that are articulate, kind of like little drumsticks. Can you hear that? Okay, so you want your fingers to be very high energy and active. Okay, this is my favorite one. We call it FBB in my cello studio, and it's finger before bow. One of the things you hear when someone's playing fast and their bow goes before their finger, or their finger and bow at the same time, it sounds like you're tripping over your notes. But you put your finger before your bow and you practice like that, you're going to just be able to play super fast because you've coordinated your bow and your left hand amazingly well. As I go through the rhythms with you, which is the sheet that I forgot to send Anna, I'll demonstrate the finger before bow. Okay, so let me just show you the sheet so you can see. Yeah. I could try and share it, but I don't quite know how to share it.
Put it up in front of the screen. I think I can make this happen. All right, go a little higher. Come backwards a little bit, a little closer to you. Hair more.
Huh?
Wait, a little bit further back. Bingo. Okay, go ahead and talk.
Okay, so do you see I've put FBB between the notes there? And then I've put those little stop signs. Those are all the places where you're going to put your finger before bow. And wherever these little red marks are, you're actually going to stop and organize the notes that way. And I'm going to demonstrate this for you so you can see how it works. Okay. The first one is the dotted eighth to a 16th. And you'll see my finger hopefully going before my bow. Now I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to do 16th first, 8th afterwards. See how the finger's going distinctly before the bow? The next one is you play the first note of, this is all now 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And when you stop after the 1, your finger's going ahead of your bow. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Whoops. I messed that one up. 1, 2, 3. The last one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alrighty, so do you see how clearly I was putting my finger before my bow? And that is, in my opinion, the key thing for playing fast with fast velocity fingers. Another tip to get your fingers to go fast is what I call note building. So you start off with one note. This is your note. Then you add another note. Then another note. Then another note. Etc. until you've included all the notes in the passage. This way you keep repeating, and as you're doing it, you want to listen to your sounds, listen, are my shifts clean, etc. And then I also, for getting my fingers to move fast, use the metronome. So once again, I start at a place where there's no hesitations. That's how you get your starting tempo. I can play this and I don't hesitate once. Then you go up 2, down 1, up 2, down 1, up 2. And eventually, before you know it, you're really playing super fast. Any questions on that? All right.
That's genius.
It is. It's like a lifesaver, actually. And I never knew about this technique until I was in college.
I never knew about this technique till today.
Anyway, it's super. And in book 1, that's what we established with the kids, because they play lift, lift, down, down, lift. So they're getting it right in their little book 1 pieces. Okay, my next tip is to do with know your bow. What I mean by that is know bow distribution. Now, I don't know if you can relate to this, but these are the issues I face. Sometimes I'm playing a long note and I go way too far in the bow, and then suddenly I've got a quick note that I've got to come back here on, and I go, whoop. Another problem is running out of bow, when you're playing a whole lot of notes and then you're squeezing the last few notes into your bow. Another bow issue is bow getting fast. And this typically happens in shifting and when you're doing trills. The bow wants to mimic the left hand, and so it kind of goes fast. So I'm going to give you a little demonstration of how I fix or work with my students to get bow distribution really good. In book 1, there's a little piece called Song of the Wind, not Song of the Wind, sorry, May Song. Okay, tools for bow distribution. I love these. These are these little clips, hair clips that you get. Okay, so in this piece, you want to keep your bow in these constraints. I'm going to just give you an example of when things go wrong. So I'm playing, see how I've gone to the way tip? And then I've got to shoot back and the sound is not good. So what we do is we train the bow to do what's called zigzag bowing. Zigzag bowing is where you help your bow stop where it needs to so that it can return to its original place without rushing and gushing the sound. So this is what it would look like. Ba, 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 ba. Did you see the little zigzag? So this is what it would look like in playing. Ooh, and then it sounds quite nice, rather than that terrible rush. So I use these all the time with my students and with my playing. Even with scales, when I'm doing the Galamian and you're trying to fit so many notes in one bow, you can separate the bow and check yourself on those. Okay, this is another example of the bow going out fast. Did you hear that? No sound in that bow stroke. So the tool I use for that, I don't know if you've seen this, it's called the bow stopper. You place it on your bow, and it's got a little arm that goes around the hair so you can't pass it. It's like a little barrier. So now I'm going to play that same little bravol piece, and you will see that I'm going to stop here and I'm going to be able to control my bow stroke much better. See, instead of going out there and swishing back, I was able to go there and then I could control everything. So very helpful tool as well, just to keep you from going to a later part of the bow. Okay. Another thing, so I don't know if you experience this, but when one shifts, because the hand is going quickly, the bow wants to go quickly. So what you want to do is slow the bow down while you're shifting. I've noticed often with my students as well that when they're trilling, because the fingers are going fast, the bow goes fast. You want to slow the bow down as well. Bow speed, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we deal with, because often when I don't know, but when I play, I'm much more left-hand focused than I am bow focused. And I have to continually tell myself, think of the bow, because this is where the sound's being produced. And so when you give your bow more time, you can really gauge your speed and all these things that make for a beautiful tone. Okay. All right, moving on to number 10 tip. This one I've titled, Let Your Bow Sing. And what I'm talking about here is legato bowing, particularly. And I do these little exercises to help my bow connect well from up bow to down bow, because these are the critical areas when things often go awry. And I call it, well, my cello teacher, actually I've adopted it from her, would call it dancing with your bow. I'll stand up and demonstrate. My head will be cut off, but you'll just see what I basically do. So I start by placing my bow on my D string. My feet are nice width apart. And as I bow, I'm going to sway initially to the same direction that my bow's going, which is right. And then I'm swaying left, right, left. So that is allowing me to transition from up to down smoothly. Then you can do the opposite. You can sway to the left as you bow right and right as you bow left. And as I do this, it helps me pour weight into the tip of my bow. Another thing I do, as I'm playing open strings, I stand up and sit down. This allows my body to feel in balance. So I'll play. Make sure your feet are where you want them to be. I move my cello forward. Stand up. Sit down. Another trick to let the bow sing, you can lift the fingers. Did you see that? So I'm giving every finger a lift as I'm bowing the string. Turn your bow around. When we play here, we obviously the bow gets light, but when you turn your bow around, ooh, nice and heavy here. And just feel that. Wow. Then I turn it back and I try and emulate that feeling. And then letting your bow sing. This can also relate to what I spoke about earlier, where you bow closer to the bridge and on the fingerboard. That's going to give a different singing voice. So okay, so these are all the variables and tricks to think about those things. Another great exercise I use for teaching my bow to sing is I set my metronome to 90. And then I count, and I start at 10, and I got to go from here to there. And then after 10, I go to 8, 6, 4, 2. So basically my bow's speeding up. So I'll just give you an example of 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I'll go 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Until I get to 2 and 2 super fast. 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's just teaching you bow speed, which is going to help you sing your bow. And then I reverse it. I start with 10 and I go up. So eventually you want to try and hold your bow for 20 counts, 30 counts. 1, 2, 3. I won't do that now, but you get the idea. So great bow control exercises. So that brings me to the end of the 10. But I've got a few more bonus ones quickly. And this, the finger before bow was one of my favorites. Well, this is probably my second favorite. Backward practice. You know how we always start at the beginning of the piece, and the beginning of the piece is really coming along beautifully. And then as we go along, it's not, the later part of the piece maybe suffers a bit. So starting at the back of the piece really strengthens your piece as a whole. So the way I do this is I start with the last maybe 2 measures. I find a little phrase, play that, repeat it, get it working really well. Then add the measure before, just work that measure. Then go all the way to the end. Then add the next measure, work that one, then go all the way to the end. So you are repeating the end measures over and over again as you keep adding. You can do that with difficult passages as well. Work them backwards. For me, it's just one of the most effective practice methods that I've used. Another tip would be to maintain an energy level of 8 when you practice. I don't know, sometimes I come to the cello and I'm not high energy. I feel like a 2. Then it's best for me to get out of my chair, maybe go and do some of my jumping jacks, run up and down the stairs a few times just to get my energy level up at 8. Because when you practice, you're learning muscle memory. Your muscles want to experience that high energy for when you're performing. So bring that same energy into your practice. And the 8 energy level is where it's at. Maybe 10, it's a bit too hyper, but 8 is a good spot. Practice while watching TV. So what I'll do is, I have this nice callus on my thumb and I don't want to ever lose it. So when I'm not practicing a whole lot in a season, I'll just get my cello and I'll just do thumb position work and get my callus working so that I don't lose it. You can also think of fingerings, when you're driving. You could even get your bow while you're sitting watching TV, do bow exercises. You don't always have to have your instrument to practice. You can do mental practice as well. And then, if you have little time to practice, use the time you have just for maintenance. not to learn new things, just for slow maintenance, tricky passages, and then call it quits. Okay, so that brings me to the end of what I had down on my notes.
You got so much into an hour and 20 minutes. I'm a little astounded. Now, you guys, of course, like we said, you can put questions in the chat, but if you would like to raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask Anne out loud, you're certainly welcome to do that too.
Okay, can I just say something though? When I'm asked certain questions like people's names and that on the spot, I don't remember easily. So I can always send Anna answers later because my brain is a bit fried, and that adds to it as well. So
all right, well, while we're seeing if anyone actually does have questions, let me ask you this. Are you available first of all, do you have any openings for students? Do you teach Zoom? Are you available for coachings for people? Like if they're on a different instrument, but they want to do a lesson about practice techniques, is that something you offer?
Oh, great. Well, I've never had someone ask about other instruments with practice techniques, but hey, I think I would like that. So I do Zoom. Right now I'm doing a mix of Zoom and in person, but a whole lot of Zoom. And it's amazing that you can actually make it work as we've had to, right? Sorry, Anna, what was your other question? Oh, yes. My studio is full at the moment, but with summer coming, I have a lot of students away. So summer is a great time if you want to have a couple lessons because I have more time. And I also have quite a few adult students that don't have regular lessons. They'll just ask me every couple of weeks, can I just come and have a lesson? And then we'll just sharpen up some things. So yes.
Awesome. Do you have any favorite YouTube people that you suggest your cellists listen to or follow?
That's what I was going to say about names. So I'll get those to you.
Yeah, email them to me. Just for those of you guys who did share your email in the chat, I have already sent these to you, these supplementary things. If you did not get them, then you're going to need to contact me and I will, of course, share them with you. So, and if you have any questions for Anne, you can send them to me and I'll forward them on to her also. So,
Yes.
and you have been amazing. I tell you, this whole series of classes has been incredible. And I talk a lot about the reason we did it for other people. I never personally expected to be so motivated and inspired, and you have done that for me. I just spent the last hour and 20 minutes going, ooh, I should teach that. Ooh, I should practice that. So thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for
Well,
that.
just watching the other ones, I've seen a couple of them. It's like I've got to go back and take notes. Even some of the violin demonstrations, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can use this,
This is the thing that I had forgotten that I learned in grad school, and that is that you can learn so much from other instruments. Don't only follow yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, you want to, right?
Yeah.
Even singing, because my teacher would always say, go and listen to the singers. They can teach you a lot about breathing and phrasing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Hey, Mom, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
I just think Anne is awesome. And that was wonderful. Made me want to go teach some little children.
Hey, and Kay, did you have something you wanted to ask? She's unmuted too, so maybe.
No, did I have my hand up accidentally?
Nope, you were just unmuted, so I didn't want to ignore you. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just, when I said that about privacy, when I was a kid, I was made to practice in the most public part of the house. And and my siblings were allowed to tease me. And it was like a performance. And, it really, I ended up quitting for many years. And I just think for any parents, it's really important and when I got time to be doing, I play violin or and piano now. When it got time to do things like vibrato and stuff, well, nobody wants to be practicing vibrato exercises and have, it's you've got to be able to practice things, repetitively that maybe don't sound good for a while without having people around acting like you're supposed to be giving them a performance every time you're practicing.
Yeah, gosh, I'm sorry. That makes me feel really bad to hear that.
Well, it was, I had one parent who was a musician who insisted that I have lessons when I expressed the interest, but left it mainly to the other parent to do all the stuff, and they weren't interested.
Yeah. In fact, just talking about that, with the Suzuki methods, that's one of the things I really like about it is it trains the parents, because they're the home teachers, and it teaches them how to approach things with the kids. It's always reinforcement first, and then finding creative ways to fix things that aren't, tearing you down, but building
Yeah.
you up.
Well,
And that has really changed, I think, a lot of the playing world, is that whole approach where you train the parent as well as the child.
it probably, I don't know that with this parent it would have helped, but Suzuki hadn't come to the United States by then. I'm old. So,
Oh.
But Kay, can I just say that it's so great because when you share that story, everyone here hears it and they remember it. They'll remember it for themselves and their kids, but they'll tell their friends. So good stuff will come out of that experience, even though it was bad for you. So thanks.
well, that's why I share it, and because my parent didn't realize that that's what they were doing. They had good intentions. They did a lot of good things. Somebody that didn't know music was trying to help in very unhelpful ways, and it's just what happened. And after many years, I'm back to playing the violin too again, and that's the way it is.
Well, that's great that you're playing again. Love it.
Me
So
too. Me too. All right, you guys, we're at 8:57. And we've got several people in the chats that have said, thank you, Anne. We enjoyed this so much, Anne. Like you're getting this long stream of that. So wanted to make sure you heard that. And so many people are muted. You can't, and they don't have your cameras, but I see people applauding. And I just want to thank you one more time. And I want to thank you all for coming. And all of the classes for curious musicians are on our YouTube channel. And maybe we'll do it again in the future. So that y'all have made this wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.